everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight on a Wednesday night to be with Community Montessori at IE Southeast. We are so excited to have Sam Chaltain here with us tonight to talk about the schools of tomorrow and the future of education and how all schools can continue to improve and what we're doing well already. We are so happy to partner for this event with IE Southeast, who has been a great supporter of our school and has collaborated with us on a lot of projects that we've done, and they've always welcomed us here with open arms. The Chancellor wished that he could be here tonight, but he had a board meeting for Indiana University, so he couldn't be with us. We also do want to extend a thank you to the Lilly Endowment. A grant from the Lilly Endowment made it possible for Sam to be with us here tonight. So we wouldn't be able to host him if it weren't for the support of the Lilly Endowment. And to welcome us to the campus, I'd like to invite Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Doyen Coca-Cola, and she has been here on campus for 2 years. And the School of Education just continues to support all schools, private schools, charter schools, public schools, and they want to be a part of everything that all the schools in our community are doing. And so I just wanted to give her an opportunity to say a few words and welcome us to the campus. If we could give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. Again, my name is Doyen Coca-Cola. I'm the Dean for the School of Education here at IUS. And on behalf of the Chancellor, who regrettably is not able to be here tonight, I would like to welcome you to Indiana University Southeast. We're so excited to be able to partner with Community Montessori School. Actually, this is my second event, with them. I was new last year when they had the documentary Most Likely to Succeed. Actually, the Chancellor and I were on the panel that responded to that documentary, and we were sitting on two ends of the table. And literally, our perspective seems to differ as well. And at the end of the panel, the Chancellor came to me and then said, Doyen, he used a language that I don't want to repeat. It's kind of strong, but he basically was telling me that I was too idealistic, in my opinion, on the panel. And then I said, well, I'm a new dean. I'm supposed to be idealistic. And I said that to mean that the purpose of the event tonight, from what I read about Sam, is to help us to understand what schooling is not today, but what it's meant to be tomorrow. And Most Likely to Succeed documentary was also about the same thing, telling us about the history of education in America and how that system that existed in the industrial age seems to be what is happening today. And so on that panel, I tried to argue the point that IUS, especially the School of Education, will be doing things differently. And we are. And so permit me to say a little bit about the School of Education at Indiana University Southeast. And the things that we're doing that I think is trying to move education along the way and perspective that I think that Sam is going to share with us tonight. The mission of the School of Education is to prepare professionals that are caring and highly qualified that will lead the transformation of schools in a diverse society. That is a long statement, but when you really break it down, the key word there is transformation. And many of you are here because of the Montessori School. When you look at the goal of the Montessori Community School, to develop qualities in children that will help them to become confident and competent adults, you will see that there's a similarity between our goal in the School of Education and the philosophy of the Montessori School. And so again, we're glad to be partnering with them. In terms of what the School of Education is doing to move educational system forward, I would like to share with you a few of what I consider are high impact practices And so in addition to the regular curriculum, we infuse into the School of Education aspects of things that would engage the students, active learning strategies. We include study abroad programs. We have one of the few study abroad programs at IUS. It's a study abroad to Ecuador. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. We also have writing intensive classes. Most of our classes require that students write long research papers that are well researched. I have a few of my faculty members here, and they will tell you that they do work hand in hand with our students to do research, take them to national and sometimes international conferences. That's another high impact practices that help students to think actively and to engage with materials that they're learning. Above all, we're very big on partnering with P212 schools in providing service learning opportunities for our students. All of our programs are field experiences and student teaching, which entails students to spend hours in the school. Before student teaching, our students spend at least 490 hours in the school for all of our undergraduate programs. Our student teaching are a minimum of 15 weeks long. Imagine that. And so when our students get into the schools, no matter which school they choose to work, whether private, charter schools, or public schools, they're well prepared in the arts and the science of teaching. And so those are just a few of the high impact practices that I think that sets, IUS School of Education apart in the terms of the way that we work with our students. So again, I welcome you. I extend a warm IUS welcome to Sam. I'm really eager to hear about those strategies that you'll be sharing with us, especially ideas that I can take to my boss, to the chancellor, to say, these innovative practices can work. Again, thank you so much. It's good to see all of you here.
Hello, I'm Barbara Berg-Fondren, Director of Community Montessori. A year ago, I was with some coworkers in Sarasota, Florida, and we were at the International Montessori Conference. And we attended that. I don't attend conferences to attend, I attend on purpose. But there was something that happened during that conference I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting to meet Sam. He was the keynote speaker. And not just with we were also so impacted by his speech, not just our Community Montessori delegation, but with the standing ovation that ensued afterwards he spoke. Sam struck a chord with his honest, courageous, and inventive look at education, and even challenged us as Montessorians to keep our eyes open. When I travel digitally and otherwise, I seek out people and look for new perspectives to broaden the scope of building relationships and trust in the education sphere. Like my other colleagues at Community Montessori, I bring back these ideas and people of interest to see how we can further grow as a community of learners. Sam Chaltain became a person of interest as he engaged us with stories, media, and emotion, sparking dozens of conversations on the van ride back to New Albany and beyond. How do we further engage learning? What are our next steps to further support our individual learners? Sam is a sought-after visitor as he crisscrosses the skies to inspire others in their missions of captivating and sustaining an audience of supporters. His diverse educational background from the University of Wisconsin to the College of William & Mary and George Washington University, along with being a student of the world, enhances his connections to others. He has no shortage of writings that have appeared in places like the New York Times and Washington Post, along with 6 books and even a documentary film. His perspectives on education have also been seen via television media as a CNN contributor, amongst others. His work as a partner at Wonder, a global design studio that helps schools and communities reimagine the future of learning, speaks volumes to his passions. We are excited about spending the day with him tomorrow as a staff to further our mission of embracing the community internally and externally. But for now, his community conversation, brought to you through the partnership with the Indiana University Southeast, the Lilly Endowment, and Community Montessori. Please join me in welcoming Sam Chaltain.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Barbara. That was so nice. Hold on, I can't multitask.
No one can, they just think they can.
I feel like some people can. Really? That makes me feel better if it's true that nobody can. Well, I definitely can't. So, thank you to IUS and the Lilly Endowment and everybody from Community Montessori. I'm really honored to be here. And I have to do one thing related to sound. Success. That's me and my wife. We were in Japan earlier this year. Isn't that a cool way to... okay. So, I want to propose something radical tonight, which is we've got an hour together, and I want to propose that in that hour, we be more curious than certain with one another. So I realize the bulk of that falls to me, because when you're the guy or the gal up here, the assumption implicitly is that you will bring certainty. And so if we have some giant topic like schools of tomorrow and the future of learning, it's comforting to think that 60 minutes from now, I or anybody can just show up and make complete sense out of that. So I want to begin by saying, my assumption is that's not what's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. What I want to do with your help is start to make some educated guesses at where we're going and start to think together about the ways in which the world is changing so that maybe we can feel a little less disoriented an hour from now than perhaps we do right now. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, so this is what I'm most curious about. So I'm a lifelong educator. I started as an English and history teacher in New York City. I used to teach Shakespeare, and what I loved about teaching Shakespeare is that it's all about what it means to be a human being. And there are different ways of getting at it. And so that's probably, I would say, the central thing that I personally am most curious about. But right now in particular, this idea of who we were, who we are, and who we are becoming, and really I do mean as Americans. I mean the American experiment. What does that mean? What are the changes that are beginning? What does it augur for our future, for the young people, for today's kindergartners and 3-year-olds, the people at the nursery? What kind of a world are they going to inhabit? This is what I'm really curious about. And so I want to kind of set the stage for what I think is in the midst of happening, and I can't think of any better way to do it than to show you a Verizon commercial from a few years ago. So here goes.
Trade in your old iPhone and get a new iPhone free at Verizon.
Did you say something, Paul?
Huh? No.
Can I run our trip? I love our trips.
Oh, me too. But no, I'm good. I know where I'm headed.
How about music?
I don't really feel it.
What a fun drive. We always have so much fun. Remember that one time?
Sure, you loved your old iPhone, but you'll love your free new iPhone you traded for even more.
Anybody remember that ad a couple of years ago? So, I remember that ad because, you know, as a writer and a filmmaker, I always pay attention to the things that are in popular culture, commercials, movies, television shows, the things that we're kind of consciously or unconsciously dreaming about together. And what seems to be happening more and more is that we are all increasingly trying to figure out how to transcend the biological limits of body and brain. And that's not new. In fact, right? I mean, I'm gonna give some shout outs to some different age groups. Like there are some of us in here who remember the Jetsons and Rosie. Those of us that lived through the 80s, you remember Short Circuit, right? Five is Alive. Then we've got Data. I could go on, right? I mean, like we have been, as a people, obsessed with the coming robot revolution for a long time. The difference is that right now, we actually are on the cusp of it. So like, by show of hands, I'm curious, how many people are familiar with the term, the technological singularity? Okay, get ready. So, the idea of the technological singularity, a singularity is like a moment in time that is so singular that what happened before it and what happens after are just two completely different worlds. So the singularity is like the all bets are off point. And the technological singularity is basically saying that from the moment, not just people arrived on Earth, but from the moment like life arrived on Earth, from the primordial soup to the Stone Age, to the Renaissance, to the advent of the personal computer, to the Super Bowl, has all been, in actuality, a rather flat curve. In the same way that like the world population, it took forever for us to get to 1 billion people on Earth. And then once we got to 1 billion, we just stayed there forever until about 300 years ago, we had the hockey stick growth. And now we're at 6 or 7 and soon we'll be at 9. Pop quiz, what was the reason that we had the hockey stick growth of population growth 300 years ago? The Industrial Revolution. But what the technological singularity suggests is that what will bring the hockey stick growth not in population, but in knowledge capacity, in problem-solving capacity, will be the moment that the carbon-based beings and the silicon-based beings merge. The silicon-based beings pass us, like that's the reason you call it the singularity, it's like nobody knows. But the crazy thing is, the prediction for the singularity, if there was even one that people were aware of back in the Jetsons, was so far in the future that it didn't matter. The prediction now for the singularity is 2035. So you think of the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in the world today, the bulk of their lives will be spent on the other side of this big question mark. That's a serious change in human history. That makes almost like Gutenberg's Bible seem small. And so that's the thing. It's like when that happens, all bets are off. We don't know. And so I'm not going to pretend that I know, but in the spirit of at least being curious and paying attention, I want to just tee up 3 examples of some of the ways in which I see this acceleration happening that have nothing to do with school, and then we can spend some time talking about the ways in which they relate directly to school, and then see what questions you have. So here's the first one. How many people have one of these in their house? That's it? Yeah, sorry. Fair point. Fair point. How many people have a boy in their house? Okay. How many people have an Amazon Echo in their house? Just you and me? That's funny. Okay, 3 of us, 4 of us. Well, so I don't know how you all feel. I'm ambivalent about the fact that I even have one of these things. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of cool. It's kind of creepy. If you haven't seen one, it's basically like it is another example of the ways in which we are slowly being acculturated to our eventual robot servants and hosts. It is a personal concierge. So this boy can ask Alexa anything, and he will. I mean, he could ask Alexa to tell him a joke. He could ask Alexa to read him a story. I have 8 and 4-year-old boys at home who are obsessed with Michael Jackson, which is another story entirely. And my 4-year-old can't read yet, but he can DJ through Alexa by saying, Alexa, play Thriller by Michael Jackson. So I have friends, I don't know if this is one of you three, I have friends that have one of these in every room. That's a little weird. But you see the ways in which our relationship to knowledge is fundamentally changing. I mean, for the bulk of human history, knowledge was a scarcity. Now it's ubiquitous. And this is just about knowledge. Then if you think about VR or AR, like, I didn't want to overwhelm you with videos, but there's a video out there. If you Google a variation of what I'm about to say, you can find it. Lockheed Martin did this experiment where they took a yellow school bus. And so these kids from like New York City hopped on this school bus thinking they were going on their typical field trip to Central Park or whatever, but they had done something with all of the windows of the bus that weren't apparent if you looked at it, only when the kids got inside. And what happened is the kids basically went on a field trip to Mars. So that as the bus was driving, the external view from the bus was showing them the topography of Mars that changed as they drove. They could touch the windows and gather more information about the red planet. I mean, that is, those of us that know Miss Frizzle, I mean, we're getting close to like the Miss Frizzle world. Oh, I love it. Everybody knows Miss Frizzle in here. It's so good. So this changing relationship to knowledge as seen through Alexa is one thing. And by the way, so there are now 5 million units of these. There's only 4 in this room, but there's 5 million that have been sold. This is only 2 years old. This is a brand new device. Now Google is in it with Google Home. So think about that hockey stick, right? If this is the 1.0, or maybe Siri is the 1.0, if this is the 2.0 version, we're going to get very quickly to 7.0, 10.0, 100.0, and then what does that do to our relationship to knowledge? I don't know, but I'm curious. Number 2, how many people are familiar with the concept of universal basic income? All right, so some more of you. So here's the thing. So this idea is like the darling of the tech billionaires of the world. So Zuckerberg, Gates, Musk, all the guys that can go by like one name, they all love UBI. That's like what you call it for short. You call it UBI. But this is not their idea. In fact, the concept of universal basic income could go back as far as Thomas Paine or Martin Luther King, or even stranger. It was this close to becoming law in 1971 under Richard Nixon. And just as another little fun fact, his 2 staffers who were most in charge of trying to see that idea through to passage were named Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. Interesting. But the idea is that basically, and particularly in the context of what we're looking at now with the technological singularity, conservative estimates say that as many as half of us in this country are highly at risk of losing our jobs to automation. Highly at risk, not kind of at risk, highly at risk, half. And that's not just working as a line cook or on an assembly line. Radiologists are at risk of automation. Lawyers are at risk of automation. Think about all of the things that rely on the ability to make sense of massive amounts of data. What's eventually going to be better able to read an X-ray, a radiologist, or a supercomputer. So what people are starting to wonder is, well, if that's true, then what is the future of work? I know we're here to talk about the future of school, but surely it is inextricably connected to the future of work. And if the future of work is not what it has been, then what are we going to do? So one of the ideas of universal basic income is you provide everybody a base salary. And by the way, this is happening now as an experiment in Finland. It's also happening as an experiment in a smaller level in Oakland, where different families are receiving, I forget what it is exactly in Oakland, but it's like $2,000 a month. In Finland, you get a basic amount whether or not you're unemployed. And there's a lot of research that goes into it. The short version is it's a way to eradicate poverty. That actually, despite all of the other things we say, the best way to get people out of poverty is to give them money. You know, it sounds like a crazy thought, but it just might work. So what's interesting about this one for me, if Alexa is about knowledge, well, you know, this is about work. And how is that, if the whole landscape of work after graduation is changing, then what must we be changing about the ways in which we think about school? What are we preparing our kids for? And here's the last one. This is an easy one. How many people are on Facebook? Yeah, except the young people. See, young people aren't on Facebook. It's an old man's game now. It's okay, we're old in here. Is anybody friends with Melvin Reddick? You know, he looks nice, doesn't he? He doesn't look like a nice guy. You see his pictures, and so here's the thing, Melvin Reddick doesn't exist. This is one of the profiles that the Russians set up to intervene in our election. It's actually, this is some Brazilian dude. And they just got his pictures online and created this profile. He went to IUP, not IUS. And here's the crazy thing. So what Russia did is they made 470 fake profiles like that. That's not a lot. When you think about the fact, you know how many people are on Facebook? 2 billion are on Facebook. So 470 Melvin Reddicks. Do you know how much they spent? Anybody want to guess how much the Russians spent once these profiles were created to plant all these fake stories and wreak havoc? And before you answer, I should say, the estimates are that these fake profiles kind of directly intersected with between 25 and 75 million of us. That's as many as 30% of the country interacted with a Melvin Reddick. And guess what it cost them? Somebody came.
200,000.
All right, it wasn't zero. It wasn't that bad. It only cost $100,000. All right, is that just me? I thought it seems like to potentially
Words impact that.
to influence an election, $100,000, 470 fake profiles. So, but of course, it's not just this. It's really about what has started to happen on Facebook, right? I mean, so if we think about 2 billion people, and by the way, 1 out of every 5 page views in the US is on Facebook. We spend an average of 20 minutes a day on Facebook, like 40 seconds at a time, right? The idea of the internet was to provide greater connectivity. And yet, what's happening more and more is this idea of the filter bubble, that we're actually increasingly isolated from anybody who has any idea different than the one that we want confirmed. So Melvin Reddick works perfectly. You want to believe that Hillary's emails was the problem? I got something for you. You want to believe that, you know, Trump is the downfall of America? I got something for you. And you never need to peer outside. And the crazy thing is, we don't even realize the extent to which that's happening that we're not even in control of. You know, Google has 57 different things that it factors into when you're doing a search, from the type of computer you're on, to where you are, to all these different things. So for example, if I was to search for Donald Trump from my hotel room tonight in Indiana, I would get a different search result than if I was doing it from my home in Washington, D.C. And I'm not asking for that, and yet that's happening. So if the internet is not giving us an opportunity to become more comfortable with the discomfort of respectfully competing ideas, if in fact it is creating an even more tribalistic base, what does that do to community? I don't know, but I'm curious. So these three things, I think, if we just think about what's happening beyond education, right? Changing relationship to knowledge, which is ultimately about a different notion of access. Changing relationship to work, which is potentially a different notion of success. And then changing notions of community as it's experienced on social media, which leads to a changing capacity to impress. That seems important. And it seems like something that has direct relevance to what I know we're most here to talk about, which is the future of school. So we'll get there, but first just a reminder of how big this change is for us, right? I mean, if we think about the educational system that everybody in this room above a certain age experienced, this was the unconscious assumption, right? Knowledge was scarce. The role of the teacher was to put it into you. And what it was content knowledge. It was, the 3 R's. It was the causes of the Civil War. It was how to write a 5-paragraph essay. The ultimate goal was to batch and queue you through a system and into an economy and a workforce that was largely fixed and known. That's not today by a long stretch. And yet, what's still true, I don't know about IUS, but what's still true in a lot of places is if you go to a college campus, you'll still find this. And to be clear, I'm not saying that there can't be this, because first of all, this is kind of awesome, right? Like how does this one person know all of this? I love that. But the assumptions of the system are still very clear, which is he has something that the rest of us don't. And the only way we can get it is to go to that room on Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. to take notes for an hour and a half. We're still operating under the scarcity mindset of knowledge, but it's already changing, right? If you just flip the camera around, even though they still have lecture rooms like this is what he's looking out at. So if every kid has a portal to the world on their desk, what are we doing, right? So I did say that we would talk about this, and now let's get into it. Again, in the spirit of being more curious and certain. So let's make some guesses about what the future of school should look like. Actually, I want to start by giving you what I think is one of the more interesting and provocative guesses that's been done recently. This relates very specifically to higher ed, but I think you all will see the relevance, and this was done by some friends of mine at Stanford. So see what you think.
Thanks everybody for coming. It's great to see everybody here. I hope you'll really enjoy it.
I want to just prepare you a little bit because we are going to launch you into the year 2025. We're going to go into the past, then we'll launch you into the future. You will get there, I hope.
2014 at Stanford Project Premiere. 1965, 96, $1 billion valuation film.
2050, Stanford announces Leonardo da Vinci as first artificial intelligence professor.
We overshot. I'm not sure what we are. We overshot? It looks safe.
All right, well, welcome to 2100, everyone.
The evening was full of disruption.
It was really mind expanding.
I really like the idea of building a mission versus a major.
And I saw the type of school where I want my kids to go to, and
I walked away thinking, why didn't I think of that?
in 2014 at Stanford Project.
The ideas here, even though they seem really far out when you first present them.
No one really knows what the future holds.
The future could be anything.
We're not here to say this is what the future is. We're here to say what could it look like and what can we do now to make for a better future.
So first of all, I recommend people that are interested going to that website and learning more about these ideas, but let me just highlight a couple of them for you. So again, this was the Stanford School of Design that was tasked with a challenge of the university itself to start to just rethink some of the most unconsciously held assumptions about what education is, how it might be different. And so one of the things that they played with was the idea of who said it was a good idea, and we know this already with the advent of the gap year, who said it was a good idea that you should just graduate from high school and go to college and go to grad school, and that all those things should be 4 years? Like, what if instead, when you got in, first of all, you didn't apply, you got nominated. And you got nominated not for the typical